housing. I've talked about childcare, healthcare. I think we need universal basic healthcare. We can pool of our resources. I get that single payer is something that people really gravitate towards because they're nervous and they want more certainty. But we still need. Well, I don't know what the certainty is when you still need federal waivers from the federal government. But you can create universal basic health care that covers primary care, mental health care, catastrophic care, right now. You could do that right now without needing the federal government. I want to be insulated from the federal government. I don't trust the federal government. They don't care about us. We care about ourselves. If we're the fourth largest economy in the world, we can create strategic investments and to create programs where we can actually do funding and get a return on an investment so that it can end up equaling the amount of money we get from the federal government so that we don't have to live in that world of uncertainty anymore. And I think you're going to see a lot of states doing that, working together and then insulating and trying to find ways to take care of themselves. And what better state than California than to lead that?
Hey, everyone. From KQED in San Francisco, this is Political Breakdown. I'm Marisa Lagos. Today on The Breakdown, we continue our series of interviews with the many candidates vying to be California's next governor. Today, we're joined by former Los Angeles Assemblyman Ian Calderon. The Democrat made history in 2012 at age 27 when he became the first millennial to be elected to the state assembly. He left politics in 2020 to spend more time with his growing family. Now, at age 40, he's running for governor. Ian Calderon, welcome to The Breakdown.
Marisa, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. We were both in Sacramento at the same time over 10 years ago, and you are jumping back in. So to start, who are you politically? What's your vision for California? Why this race now?
I got to be in Sacramento at a really unique time when I was the first millennial and, there was this kind of upswing of some younger candidates that were running. And I feel like I got to pave the way into, helping that happen. I got to work on a lot of things that were really important to me. But as you talked about, because my family was young, I made a decision that nobody makes, which is to give up power to go and be with your family. And so I've been a business owner for the last couple of years, and I've been home. I've been really enjoying myself, being able to take my kids to school and pick them up from school and being with my wife. But it's really difficult to live in this state. And it was actually a conversation that I was having with my wife because we like to divide and conquer at night. And so we have
you have 4 children, so you have to divide and conquer.
And we have 2 boys, 2 girls. Girls are the oldest, which is actually really helpful, and the boys are the youngest. And so once we get them down, we go downstairs, and that's our time to talk, and we hang out. And we started having this conversation about our oldest daughter, Charlie, and when she was going to come to us one day and say, Mom, Dad, as much as I love you guys, but if I want to move out of your house, I want to own my own home, I want to start my own family, I'm going to have to do it and move to another state. And that was something significantly impactful to me, just having that conversation with my wife, because I know that if we're having these conversations, so many other families across the state are having those conversations. And when you look at the generational shift in leadership that is happening across this country right now, with Zohran Mamdani becoming the new mayor, candidates in Michigan and in Maine that are really, galvanizing this idea of what it's like to be new in this new generation of leadership. Well, I was that. I did that. I was that back in 2012 when I got elected. And I just feel like, especially with even the retirements in Congress, you're seeing a ton of members of Congress that
especially
are retiring
in California,
now. Especially in California. And what are they all saying? It's time for a new generation of leadership. So I think if there was ever a time for me to do this, it would be now. And you have to recognize that everything that is the most important thing in the world to me is tied to the future of this state and who the next governor is going to be. It's whether or not my family gets to stay here, whether or not my kids are going to be able to feel like they can stay here and raise their family here. So it's important to me, and I feel like who better than myself to step up and do it, because everything is on the line for me, and I believe that I can do it. I have the right experience, and I know how to get things done in Sacramento.
Yeah, well, I want to get into a little bit about your background experience, but I do have to ask, this is a really crowded field, an incredibly expensive state to run in. It's hard to break out, and you are not super known statewide. You're lagging in fundraising. Like, what would your pitch be to somebody who says, I like your ideas, I like who you are, but are you viable?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I just feel like take a look at where the race is right now, and how can you make the argument in terms of viability? You're doing these name ID polls, and name ID polls are saying, do you know this person? Do you not know that person? And what these polls are showing is like, okay, well, I know this person, so I know that name, so I guess I support them. But if you really look at it, that support is really soft. And what you're saying is voters right now, and you've seen this across the country, in my opinion, for the last year plus, they're not necessarily so attached to the rhetoric or the political party. They're attached to the person, the candidate, and what that candidate is offering, and their perception of how they can actually get things done and deliver on the things that they're promising. And so I just believe that, for somebody like me in my position, this is going to be a late consolidating race. The entire race is up for grabs. 30+% of the electorate is completely undecided. And so for me, my challenge is, yeah, sure, it's visibility, but I feel like that's a momentary challenge right now that can be solved relatively quickly. We've spent a lot of time on social media, optimizing it. We've reached a lot of people just through my Instagram and other social media platforms. So I just think that at some point in time, there is going to be a breakout, and that's going to help me. That's going to help me become a major factor in this race, especially because I'm the one they're not seeing, and by the polling, what I'm saying and who I represent technically is who they're looking for.
Obviously. All right. Well, you do come from a political family. In fact, I don't think you had been born yet when your dad, Charles Calderon, was first elected to the Assembly. Many years later, I sat right behind him when I was a reporter at the Chronicle on the floor of the Assembly, so I knew his policies well. But I wonder, how his service affected your upbringing. Was it inspiring? Was it hard to have him gone that much? It's a long commute from LA to Sacramento.
Because of him and because of his service, I learned the value of public service at a very early age, and he learned it from his mom. My grandmother was our first generation that was born in this country in Texas, grew up very, very poor. So poor that at night they would actually have to go through dumpsters to find food because they didn't have it. And it was actually a church one day that they had heard, and there was loud music and singing. So they went in and they found comfort in being, hiding in the back and listening to the singing and hearing the inspirational messages. And one day the parishioners saw them and, brought them out, and they'd feed them at night. And so my grandmother was very, very committed to community, very, very committed to her church, very, very committed to public service. And that translated to my father, who was a prosecutor in the LADA's office and then was a school board member. And then he got elected to the state assembly in 1982, and I was born in 1985. And you can see literal pictures of him giving speeches and me as a baby in his arms while I was, while he was giving those speeches. And so you
didn't know any different.
I didn't know any different. But also at the same time, certainly, I was a big sports guy. Not only did I play baseball, I surfed. And so there was a lot of things that he couldn't be a part of and he couldn't see. And so that was impactful. And I recognize that with my own kids now and me running for this position if I were to be successful. And that's also why I left it when I was in the legislature, because I did have that experience and I didn't want to miss moments that I knew I was never going to get back. But I just feel like we're at an inflection point. And if we're going to change the path and change the trajectory, now's the time to do it. And I believe I'm the right one to do it.
So you went to college at CSU Long Beach. I wonder at the time, did you see politics as a potential future? What did you think you were going to do with your life?
No, not a chance, actually. So I studied political science, which of course I minored in communication, but I was really into surfing. I received my first sponsor when I was 10 years old. I was competitive. I traveled. I got a lot of things for free, as a sponsored athlete would.
Yeah.
And I just always assumed that would be my trajectory. I eventually got to a point, and it's like, okay, Kelly Slater, Rob Machado, Shane Dorian, these are the guys that are actually making any kind of real money in this job, so I should probably go to college. That's probably good. It's not that I don't doubt my talent and my skills, but there are just so few people making any money and at that time and being successful. So I went to college, Long Beach State. And then while I was there, it was kind of where my perception and my perspective changed. It didn't mean I gave up surfing. I mean, me and my buddy, we revived the surf club. We were competing in 2006. I was a collegiate state champion for CSU Long Beach. So I held on to that, but I really started kind of reevaluating what it is that I'm going to do. And so out of college, I did end up going to work for Hurley International. They were my main sponsor. And so I did LA Inland Empire retail marketing. So basically from Long Beach all the way out to Goleta, into Palmdale and Victorville. That was my territory where I managed VIP clients and, our best client accounts. But I didn't really love the sales life, to be honest with you, and then that's why I decided to make the transition to work for a state legislator, and the rest is history.
All right, we are going to talk about that in just a minute. We're going to take a short break first. When we come back, we will continue our conversation with Democratic candidate for governor Ian Calderon. You're listening to Political Breakdown from KQED News. Welcome back to Political Breakdown. I'm Marisa Lagos. Today we're speaking with former state assemblyman Ian Calderon. He is part of a crowded field running for governor. We are trying to interview all the major candidates. And Ian Calderon, as we said before, you were elected in 2012, age 27, to the assembly. I'm curious, coming into office, what were your huge priorities then? What do you see as your biggest legislative accomplishments?
I ran on a new generation of leadership at the time. There were a ton of decisions that were happening in Sacramento, and those consequences were really rolling downhill. And so the argument I made to my community was, just let me be at the table. Let our generation have a voice at the table. I don't need to be the one calling the shots. I don't need to be the one getting all the attention, but I do think our perspective is important because we're going to have to live with all of the consequences of the decisions that are being made now. And so I talked about financial literacy, tech literacy, modernizing how government delivered its services, and that's really a lot of what I worked on. I mean, yes, I worked on film tax credit legislation so that we could keep the film industry in California because that's really important. I mean, half our economy is the creative economy, so we want to be able to continue to build that. I also did focus on arts education funding. When I stepped in, we were funding arts education about $1 million a year statewide. Wow. Now we're up to $25 million a year because I champion that. Because if we have an economy completely built on creativity and that creative economy generating all this revenue that we turn into all these programs or fund all these programs in education, well, we should be making sure that we're investing in programs that are going to help us continue to be that, creative, innovative capital of the world. And so I got to work on that. Financial literacy. This is coming out of the Great Recession. Right. And so we ended up in the Great Recession because people don't understand money. And my argument was every kid graduating from high school in California should be completely financially literate. And as you know, because of your time in Sacramento, the two most political issues in Sacramento, water and education. Yeah. Most political. And so this wasn't an easy lift, but I authored a bill saying you need 6 years of financial literacy education K through 12. 2 years in elementary, 2 years in middle school, 2 years in high school. And this was when Brown was still governor. I muscled that thing all the way through the legislature with a whole lot of pushback, especially from the Senate Education Committee chair who in committee was trying to kill the bill, wow. But I got senators to roll with me on this. We got it to the governor. It got signed to create 6 years of financial literacy. Fast forward 10 years, because I authored this bill around 2016. Yeah. State Board of Education has still not implemented that bill. And I am so frustrated because it is such a common sense thing. I mean, and then just technology. I'm the co-founder of Legislative Tech and Innovation Caucus. And, I created the Blockchain Working Group. And the Blockchain Working Group, the impetus of that whole thing is blockchain technology is the underlying technology, which is a digital ledger that, it underlies and underpins Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, but it's transparent and it's immutable. And so I said, why don't we use this technology to modernize how we deliver services and make ourselves more effective and more efficient at delivering those services? And so created the Blockchain Working Group. We did all of our meetings at Berkeley and we brought all the different groups together to talk about it. And it was a huge success. And what I was saying was, let's use it to do state payments, because if we implement it for state payments, we really can cut down on fraud because we can see, and it's transparent. Everybody can see it. Well, that was back in 2017, and then come COVID 2020, and we ended up losing $20+ billion in fraud. Had we implemented blockchain technology, we might not have lost that $20 billion. Or we would have at least known who approved the spending, and who was accountable and responsible for making the decisions that resulted in a lot of fraud that was important money we could have used for a lot of other important things to fund in the state.
Yeah, it's always amazing to me as the home of Silicon Valley how far behind our government is. I want to dig in on a couple of things. Like you brought up education. We're at a really tough moment right now. We're seeing a lot of potential strikes around the state. And I wonder, the governor actually in his budget proposal this year is proposing kind of stripping some power from the state superintendent of education, bringing the Board of Education more directly under the governor's office control. Do you support that?
I support reinventing the way government operates because it's been so inefficient for so long. Whether this is the right proposal, I need to spend more time with that, and I need to understand a little bit more of the dynamics of the superintendent. But it's like, even me now, when I was struggling with the frustration of my bill not being implemented, I called the superintendent of public instruction, who I served with, and I was like, hey, man, this is
Another
not right.
Another candidate for governor, Tony Thurmond,
Can we get this done? And he's just like, oh, they're dragging their feet. I really don't know where it is. I want to help. And then it's just like nothing happened. And so, that was an eye-opening moment for me just because, you are in this position and you should be able to effectuate change in this way. But, I just feel like it is, and I feel it's no secret. we're at a moment in time where people just feel like they're being failed left and right by their government, and they feel like they're not the ones that are the priority. It's politics and your own political aspirations and how much attention you can get online. That's what people perceive Sacramento and politicians in general as what's being important to them, while we're struggling, we're suffering. And you're seeing these strikes. And a lot of it, to be honest with you, falls on the state. And it falls on the state because if the cost of living wasn't so high, then these teachers wouldn't be begging for raises so that they can afford to live in this state. Covering childcare. We have 4 kids. When all 4 of our kids were in daycare, we were spending more a month in childcare than we were in our rent.
I mean, far more. I think when 2 of my kids were in childcare, we were, exceeding that.
But that's so backwards, especially when you take a look at all the funding that comes in right now, what we could do is we could pull all of that funding together, and cap spending for families across the state that covers 95% of the kids at $500 a month, 0 to 5. And you're probably looking at maybe another $4 billion, $5 billion of state allocated money. So in a budget of $381 billion, we can't find another or repurpose $4 or $5 billion to fund basically universal child care, capping at $500 with, different levels of funding where people that are getting it for free could still get it for free, and those that are making more pay the $500.
I mean, I want to push you on that a little, though, because the money in the budget is spoken for. And as we know, costs grow every year. The cost of paying people grows. The cost of health benefits grows. That is by far the largest sort of price tag in the state budget. And then within that, most of the money is going to health and human services or to education. Like, let's take healthcare. We're seeing billions of dollars in cuts from the Trump administration, another 600, I think, million just this week that they're threatening to pull from a variety of programs. How do you do the things you're talking about while dealing with this deep uncertainty, both from the Trump administration and just from the economy?
I mean, yeah, but we're also spending $200 million on electric vehicle rebates for people that probably don't need the rebates to buy an electric vehicle. So, that's not the greatest portion of the funding. There's a lot of money, that's being spent in other ways that I just wouldn't spend it. And so what I'm saying is that, my budget is going to represent a statement of my values and what I believe to be important in people's lives right now to make the biggest significant difference in their lives right now.
Talk about some of those proposals. Affordability. I know you've talked about like more tax credits for renters and first-time homeowners. What is sort of the core of your affordability agenda here?
Yeah, I mean, well, when it comes to housing, renters need to be able to save to buy a house. We don't have a reasonable pathway to home ownership. 55% of Californians are homeowners. The average age of first-time home buyers, 40 years old. Median price homes, $800,000, twice the national average. So what we need to do is we need to be able to give renters the ability to save for save for a down payment and giving them a refundable tax credit so they can save up to $1,200 a year. Provide relief for homeowners by increasing the property tax exemption from $7,000 to $70,000. And you pay for it by charging institutional and foreign investors that own 1 in 5 homes in this state a large upfront fee for anything that they buy and an ongoing annual fee for buying our homes and pricing families out of home ownership. And so housing. I've talked about childcare, healthcare. I think we need universal basic healthcare. We can pool of our resources. I get that single payer is something that people really gravitate towards because they're nervous and they want more certainty. But we still need, I don't know what the certainty is when you still need federal waivers from the federal government. But you can create universal basic health care that covers primary care, mental health care, catastrophic care, right now. You could do that right now without needing the federal government. I want to be insulated from the federal government. I don't trust the federal government. They don't care about us. We care about ourselves. If we're the 4th largest economy in the world, we can create strategic investments and to create programs where we can actually do funding and get a return on an investment so that it can end up equaling the amount of money we get from the federal government so that we don't have to live in that world of uncertainty anymore. And I think you're going to see a lot of states doing that, working together and then insulating and trying to find ways to take care of themselves. And what better state than California than to lead that?
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Political Breakdown from KQED News. I'm Marisa Lagos. Our guest today is Democratic candidate for governor Ian Calderon. Well, I mean, universal health care is expensive. We're seeing $30 billion a year being cut from California just from that big policy bill passed last year by Republicans in Congress, signed by Trump. I mean, how are you how do you square that? Do you want to look for new funding sources within California? Because we're seeing not only these cuts, but they're preventing the state from being able to continue expanding universal coverage.
Yeah, I mean, right now, at least right now, collectively, between what the state puts in and what all of us spend through our premiums and our deductibles, it's $400 billion, a little over $400 billion. And that would cover a universal basic healthcare system. There are going to continue to be challenges from the federal government. But what I'm saying is we always love talking about being the fourth largest economy in the world. And the focus shouldn't be just spend only. It should be on reinforcing our position to take care of ourselves, to account for the fact that we have uncertainty from the federal government. So over a 5 to 6 year period, you strategically fund, maybe it's, to support green infrastructure but you're getting a return on that investment from those dollars going out and funding these programs and these projects, that over time it generates revenue that supplants the lack of funding that we're getting from the federal government or the hole that's in the state budget. I mean, my idea when it comes to charging fees on foreign and corporate interests buying our homes, that's a $15 billion raise right there. You raise $15 billion. And so there are a lot of different creative and innovative ways that we can do that. Accountability. I mean, it would be great if it's going to be great when we do forensic audits of every state spending program, every tax credit, to really know where we stand. Where is the money going, and are we really getting that return on investment that was always intended? I bet you there are some tax credit programs that exist that are 30 plus years old that maybe aren't giving us what we intend to get. And I'm not saying that that's a certainty, but I'm pretty sure we're going to find some money and then better utilizing those dollars when we find those dollars. But I think a lot of money gets blown in ways that we're just not paying attention to. There's not enough accountability. So you want an independent auditor, and I want a prosecutor stationed within the governor's office and the administration, independent from any influence from the governor's office or anybody else, but that is prosecuting fraud. And I think that you have to restore trust. People don't trust the institution of government. I mean, my generation, we don't trust any institutions anymore because they've constantly failed us and let us down. So you have to rebuild that trust. You got to do it with accountability and transparency. And you got to really focus on policies that make people feel like, okay, you are finally seeing me and you're doing something that's making a meaningful difference in my everyday life. And my experience as a legislator, in particular, the majority leader, the youngest in the history of the state, is I understand where the power lies in the legislature. I understand where the power lies in state government. I know how to do things that a lot of other candidates in this race don't know how to do, because I'm the only one that's been in the legislature within the last decade. So I have the right experience to do it and relationships to do it because I did it.
Yeah. One thing you talked about in your campaign launch was Bitcoin. And I wonder, why are you talking about crypto? How do you see it sort of fitting into everything we're discussing here?
I mean, this is an asset that's never going to go away. There is no CEO of Bitcoin. There is no, it's completely separate from any entity and of being, controlled by one individual, which a lot of other cryptocurrencies are, but Bitcoin's different than these other cryptocurrencies. But for me, the point I'm making is here's a new technology that, if you look at the, 10-year cycle, 4-year cycle of this asset, it continues to go up, up, and up. So if there's a way for the state to benefit from investing some strategic dollars, just like we would in a rainy day fund, why wouldn't we attach it to an asset that has ability to provide explosive growth, to generate revenue that we can then put into funding these programs and meet, filling the gap of some of these holes. So I'm not saying, we're going to rely on Bitcoin or any type of digital asset to solve our problems, but it should be part of the conversation.
Do you have concerns about the regulation? I mean, it's a very underregulated industry, a lot of risk to consumers at this point.
I mean, I think that what's happening in the federal government is important. The Clarity Act is going to be a huge issue when it comes to the certainty that people feel around the asset and its regulation. So, I mean, you always have to be concerned to a degree, but I also think that you have to be willing to look at things differently. And just because there's not so much that's known about a specific asset or issue doesn't mean you don't, look at it as a potentially viable option.
I want to switch gears and ask you about one thing. Your dad was part of a political dynasty. Both his brothers were in the state legislature, but a couple years after you were elected, they both were charged with corruption.
1 year.
1 year, right after you got there. I wonder how that affected your view of what, to that point, had been the family business and quite frankly, your relationships with them.
The reality is that there was already a strained relationship between my father and my uncles long before this had already happened. There's just a difference in opinion about how to do things and how not to do things, and conversations that have been had of like, hey, be careful.
Okay.
But when that happened, that was significantly hurtful in a lot of ways to the family. I mean, I had just gotten elected. I was 27 years old, and now everybody's looking at me like, okay, well, what role did you play? It's like, well, obviously I didn't play a role. I knew nothing that was going on, but my political career had almost just was about to end, in my opinion, as quickly as it just started.
Yeah.
Through nothing that had anything to do with me. I mean, think about my father. He had dedicated his life to public service. What he had was his name. And because of the actions of these two other guys, his brothers, that's wiped away immediately. And so it was a really hard time for our family. I almost lost my very first re-election as a result of that. I mean, when you take that issue and you couple it with the fact that it was historically low voter turnout, lowest that we had seen. I think somebody had said since the Civil War.
This is 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just an interesting time, but it was really scary because I didn't know what my future was going to be, and all I knew is that people were looking at me, judging me for the actions of somebody else that I had nothing to do with. And but I am glad from the perspective of my own experience that I did experience that, because it really taught me how I should operate, and that there just is a line that you never get close to. Not that I would have ever gotten close to that, but it's just don't
really clarifies that.
I understand I understood to a different level and to a different degree. You're here to do a job, and you better do it the right way. And I just learned a lot to protect myself and also mature in a way that I think a 27-year-old guy at the time needs to mature about, the heaviness of the role that you're taking on and what you're stepping into.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering that. I think it's really interesting to kind of hear your perspective. And I'm sure, having the same last name, it's been a challenge. Well, we're getting short on time. When we started, I mentioned just how crowded this field is, how hard it is to break out. You might be able to say this is a long shot candidacy. I wonder to you, is success only winning this race, or is it helping influence the debate?
Well, I think I already am influencing the debate. Nobody was talking about corporations buying homes until I started talking about it. Now it's the hot button,
Trump
hot
and
topic
Newsom
issue.
agree on it.
I've just got these ideas, Marisa, and I'm setting the tone. I mean, even when it comes to ICE and and the actions around ICE and the concerns around ICE, I was the very first one to say that I would direct the Attorney General to file charges against any federal agent that comes into our state and violates our laws. And now all the candidates are picking that up. So I have been able to impact this race, and I have been able to impact the discussion and what we talk about and what the priorities are in a significant way. I think other candidates in this race, because they have more money, they think that they can take these ideas and use them as their own without any consequence. But in my opinion, it's just a matter of time until people see me and really understand who actually came up with these ideas and why I'm really just different from anybody else in this race. This isn't about me. I'm not an ego guy. My whole job as majority leader was behind the scenes and being quiet.
Yeah.
You never saw me out there standing up on anything, to try to get attention. If I came up, I stood on the floor, I spoke, or I did something, it was for a purpose. It was for a reason. Otherwise, everything that I did was quiet because I cared about doing the job the right way and getting things done that I had got elected to do. And that's exactly what I did. And I think that that's the type of leadership that Californians are looking for. I think success is winning. And Zohran Mamdani was pretty much an outsider that nobody thought was going to get there until all of a sudden, a couple months out, he started gaining traction and became the mayor. People are looking for something new. They're looking for something different. They do not want a continuation of what has been. They don't want the same thing. They want something different, innovative, creative. And I just believe that I'm the only one in this race that represents that. And I represent it because when I had power, I gave it up, and now I'm coming back.
Yeah. All right. We're ending on the same question for all the governor candidates. And this might, I have a guess that you might cite a beach given your surfing background here. But
Okay.
Where would you take an out-of-state friend to give them a taste of California?
Give them a taste of California, an out-of-state friend. Yeah, I think it's going to be a beach. I would probably take them to Salt Creek and Dana Point. It is just such a really interesting, unique place. It's a huge beach. You walk all the way down to the end. There's tide pools that you can walk around, and it's just it's an amazing place. But also at the same time, that's very coastal California, and our coastline is beautiful. And of course, who wouldn't want to take somebody to Disneyland if they hadn't been to Disneyland.
Well, yeah. All right. The beach in the morning, Disneyland in the afternoon. Ian Calderon, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And that's going to be a wrap for Thursday, February 19th. Political Breakdown is a production of KQED. Our engineer today is Jim Bennett. Our producer is Izzy Bloom. And our video team includes Matt Morales and Vivian Morales. You're going to be able to find all of our interviews for governor in our podcast feed in the coming weeks. And you can also watch them on the KQED News YouTube channel. We're going to be posting a lot more content there this year in general, so check it out. For today, I'm Marisa Lagos. We'll see you next time.